The Dragonback series by Timothy Zahn. Book 4, Dragon and Herdsman. Chapter 8. Kren, of course, didn't understand. You want to take our pukas? The big Arasva asked, blinking his eyes a half dozen times as he stared at Jack. But why? Because there are bad men who want to hurt them, Jack said for the third time. I want to take them into the forest where they'll be safer. But why would anyone want to hurt them? The big Arasva persisted, still blinking. They don't hurt anyone. I know that, Jack said. As I said, these are bad men. One of Friend's hands slipped into his robe and began restlessly stroking his shoulder where the Kada head draped over his skin. Yet you are a good man? I try, Jack said, feeling sweat collecting beneath his collar. They didn't have time for this. You have to believe me when I say I care as much about your pukas as you do. Rand shook his head slowly. They cannot go alone, he said, his forehead creased with concentration. Not even with you. Yes, I know, Jack said. I'll also need 10 Erasmus to come with us. Maybe you'd be willing to be one of them? For a long moment, Haran stood without speaking, still stroking his Kada as he gazed out into space. Then abruptly, the look of concentration disappeared. Then we must go at once, he said, hauling his bulk to his feet. I will gather the other. He held out his hands, frowning hard at the fingers. The other 9, he concluded. We will meet you there. He pointed to the far side of the clearing, where Jack could see the entrance to another path. Thank you, Jack said. One other thing. My friend Allison must not be allowed to see how the pukas come on and off of your skin. Why not? Because she won't understand, Jack told him. The whole thing may terrify her and cause her to abandon us and run off. We can't let that happen, for her sake as well as ours. Can you make sure the pukas and other Arasvas understand that? Kren eyed Jack closely. You have many secrets, young Jack, he said. Perhaps too many. Very well. I will make the arrangements. Allison was still standing where Jack had left her. Well? He's coming, Jack said, grabbing his pack and hoisting it onto his back. Settling it in place, he walked over to a pair of Kada who were probing with their muzzles at the base of a patch of reedy plants. And he's bringing a few more of the Erasvas to help. To help with what? She called after him. Breaking trail? They'll meet us at that path, Jack said, ignoring the comment. The 2 Kada, he saw now, were busily gobbling down some small lizards they'd flushed from the reeds. Okay, pukas, he said soothingly, waving his hands in a sweeping motion that probably looked as ridiculous as it felt. Time to go. Come on. That way. The 2 dragons paused in their meal long enough to bring their heads up and look blankly at him. Then, without budging an inch, they returned their attentions to the lizards. Dracos, Jack muttered. Your people have a mush command or something? Try pulling gently against their crests at the point where they descend from the back of the head down the neck, Draco suggested. Okay, Jack said doubtfully. Stepping between the 2 Kada, he got a hand behind each of their crests. Trying not to think about Uncle Virgil's old warning about never bothering a dog when it was eating, he gingerly applied some pressure. The 2 Kada looked up again, and Jack had the distinct feeling that they were mildly surprised at the liberty he was taking with them. But neither seemed inclined to run, or, more important, to bite. A little harder, Draco said. Setting his teeth, Jack did so. This time, to his amazement, the Kadah stood upright and began walking in the direction he was pulling. I'll be sizzled, he muttered, keeping the pressure steady as he settled in between them. So that's the technique, huh? Allison said from behind him. It'll do for a start, Jack said, looking around. Unfortunately, it was going to take way too long to get 60 Kadah moving this way. What we need is the head puka, he said, searching his memory. Uncle Virgil had often used animal and nature examples and analogies in his training. The bellwether, I think it's called. The one everyone else follows, Allison said, nodding. Great. Any idea how we figure out which one that is? Give me a minute, Jack said, doing a slow turn to give Dracos a good look. He murmured toward his shoulder. There! Dracos murmured, his tongue lifting slightly from Jack's skin to point at a large emerald Kadah with 3 smaller dragons of different colors following closely behind him. Try him! Let's try him, Jack said, pointing to the green dragon. I'll go, Allison volunteered. You might as well get those 2 on the path. She headed off. Jack, I must speak with you, Dracos said as the boy got his 2 Kadah moving again. We cannot follow Allison's plan of hiding in the foothills. Why not? Jack asked. Dracos hesitated. Because there is a chance the SNA is still intact and functional. Jack felt his chest tighten. Why didn't you say so before? He demanded. I tried, but you gave me no opportunity, the dragon said. Do you remember my telling Uncle Verge to use the saga of Fistra? Jack nodded. You called out one of your fancy Kadah maneuvers, then said that. Correct, Dracos said. Fistra was a young Shantine who was trapped by enemies at the edge of a grassy cliff. With no other hope of escape, he set fire to the grass and under cover of the smoke leaped into the river below. That last explosion, and then the ship disappeared, Jack said slowly, thinking back. And he was just about over the river, wasn't he? Yes, Dracos said. The questions are 2. First, could the SNA survive such a dive into the water? Then second, would it be able to conceal itself afterward from the transport sensors? Yes to the first, I think, Jack said, his pulse pounding with new hope. He should have known Uncle Verge wouldn't have gone so easily. The SNA was pretty tough to begin with, and Uncle Verge put a lot of money into building it up. And I'd say a probable yes to the second, too. You've seen the chameleon hull wrap in action. It's as close to invisibility as you can get. Yes, I know, Dracos said. My question was whether the hull wrap would work in water, or whether there would be some sort of bubble effect that would be detected. No idea, Jack admitted. They reached the edge of the clearing, and he shifted grips on his 2 Kadah to guide them through the opening in the bushes. As far as I know, Uncle Virgil never tried hiding in water. But remember how busy that river is. All that churning whitewater and floating silt would work in his favor. Agreed, Dracos said. Then we are left with only the question of what precisely Uncle Verge will do once Colonel Frost turns his attention to us. Well, he won't just charge to the rescue, that's for sure, Jack said, chewing his lower lip. That capstan can probably outgun him 4-1. My guess is that he'll stay underwater and try to move downriver. He looked down at his chest. Which is why you don't want to hole up in the foothills, isn't it? He said with sudden understanding. You want us to make for the river and try to link up with the SNA there. Exactly, Dracos said. Provided Allison's friends don't arrive first, of course. Yeah, well, I'm not going to hold my breath on that one, Jack said grimly, trying to remember the geography they'd seen on their way in. The river cut straight through the middle of the forest, which meant that as long as they kept going north, they were bound to hit it. That was the good news. The bad news was that he also remembered it being a good 50-mile trek. 50 miles of unknown territory and unknown dangers, with 60 barely sentient Kada and 10 wide-bodied Arasvas to drag along with them. Gangway! Allison's voice came from behind him. Jack turned and saw her guide the green dragon through the bushes, and behind them, in more or less single file, was the rest of the herd. The herd. Jack felt an unpleasant shiver run through him. Dracos had so often pointed out what a proud and noble people the Kada were. Yet here, through some horrible twist of fate, they'd been reduced to something no better than animals. Maybe Dracos had been right. Maybe they would be better off dead. Well, Allison prompted. Jack took a deep breath. Right, he said. Stepping to the other side of the green dragon, Jack got a grip on the Kada's crest. Let's go! The first 100 yards were easy. The Arasvas had obviously been all through this area. The path meandered around in what Jack was starting to realize was typical Arasva fashion. A dozen somewhat narrower trails led off the main path in various directions, where one or two of the big aliens had gone exploring for berries and other food. At the end of that 100 yards, though, the trail came to an abrupt halt at the edge of a 20-foot cliff. Well, we needed to head west sometime anyway, Allison said as she and Jack surveyed the drop-off. Let's go back to that last left-hand bunny trail and see how far it'll take us. Sounds good, Jack agreed. He hadn't had a chance yet to tell her about the change in their travel plans, but there would be time for that once they'd gotten past this cliff. Go ahead and check it out. I'll bring Greenie and follow. Jack! Colonel Frost's voice came suddenly from his left shoulder. Can you hear me? Don't answer, Allison said sharply. I know, Jack said, double-checking that the comm-clip's transmitter was still off. I know you can hear me, Jack, Frost went on. I'm sorry about your uncle. I really am. Please believe me when I say that we really did want him alive. But he took one gamble too many. I'm afraid he and your ship are both gone. Jack set his teeth firmly down on his tongue. Frost was trying to goad him into talking, he knew, hoping for some anguished cry of anger or denial or defiance that could be traced. But he wasn't going to fall for it. Dracos' trick had worked, he told himself firmly, and the SNA was safe. It had to be. Just one of the many hazards of carrying missiles aboard a ship that was never designed for them, Frost said. Those were highly illegal for you to have, by the way. Jack looked superstitiously at Allison. She was gazing back at him, a thoughtful look on her face that he didn't care for at all. Sadly, there's nothing any of us can do about that now, Frost said. Except, of course, to make sure you and your Kada don't suffer his same fate. Better turn it off, Allison said. Out here in the middle of nowhere, even electronics as small as a comm clip can sometimes be detected. Yeah, that part of Sergeant Grisco's training I remember, Jack said. He switched off the comm clip, cutting Frost off in mid-sentence. We'd better get out of here. Right, Allison said. You take Greenie and get everybody moving down the path. I'll hang back a ways and play rear guard. Beneath Jack's shirt, Kada claws brushed lightly but urgently at Jack's skin. Better idea. You take them, he said, thinking fast. Now that we're out of the main Arasva stomping grounds, I can go ahead and set that booby trap I was going to use earlier. A slight frown creased her forehead, but she nodded. Okay, but don't be too long, she said. Getting a grip on the green Kada's crest, she turned him around and started maneuvering her way back through the crowd of Kada and Arasvas that had gathered behind them. Is something wrong? Kren asked as Allison and Greenie reached the side trail and started along it. He didn't seem particularly worried, merely curious. A small change in direction, Jack assured him as he passed the other. Stay with Allison and help her keep the pukas together. I will, Kren promised. Jack reached the back of the crowd and continued on. A wide S-curve later, he was out of their sight. Okay, buddy, we're on, he murmured. There was a surge of weight against his shoulders, and Dracos leaped out of his shirt. What is the plan? The dragon asked, his gold scales glistening in the sunlight filtering through the mass of branches high above them. The plan is to keep Frost and his band of pirates from catching us, Jack told him grimly. I just wish I really had something to use as a booby trap like Allison thinks I have. You do, Draco said. You have me. Yeah, I figured you'd say that, Jack said grimly. Problem is, they know about you now. That means no more sneak attacks. Perhaps, Draco said calmly. He rose partially up on his hind legs, his neck stretching upward as he tried to look past the bushes and branches. His tongue flicked in and out of his mouth a few times as he smelled the air. I may yet have a few surprises for them. What will you do while I am gone? Jack made a face at the other's implied order that he stay back here where it would be safer. But Dracos was right. He hardly needed Jack's help at this sort of thing, and the boy would just be in the way. I thought I'd try to hide the spot where we left the trail, he said. Good, Draco said. I will be as quick as I can. Turning, he headed back toward the clearing, moving like a whisper of breeze through the grass and bushes. Taking a deep breath, Jack moved to the side of the path and began gathering loose branches and small shrubs to hide their path. Warrior's luck, he murmured to the empty air.